Hey guys, Blind Eyes Open is a first of a kind Christian documentary that dives deep into the sex trafficking industry in the United States. And today I welcome the executive producer of that film, Jeffrey Rogers. Jeffrey, welcome, man. Thanks for hanging out.
Carl, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the time and all your focus on this critically important topic. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. I got a chance to watch the film last night, in fact, and man, it is so powerful. A lot of people think that sex trafficking is a third world problem. We talk about it happening in other countries, but the amount that it's happening, the frequency that it's happening, the amount of money made from it happening in the United States is staggering. Tell me about some of the stats about sex trafficking in the U.S.
Yeah, it is staggering and it's unknown to most people around the country. People that when they think about sex trafficking, even those that know about it, many times think of it as this overseas problem, right? In
Right.
Thailand or other countries around the world. That's true. But the fact is, we have outside of our own borders. So we would estimate there are over 100,000 kids under the age of 18 trafficked for sex
Mm.
every single day in America. And these are US born kids. 60-70% of the kids come out of the foster care system. So these are US born kids being trafficked by US citizens and being purchased by US citizens. And so it's a major problem here throughout the country, which is why we produce this film is
Yeah.
to get the word out, to reach out to people, to let them know the truth of what's happening inside of our own borders here.
So tell me how the movie came about for you and why you chose to tackle this issue.
That's a quite long story. I'll make it short though. So I actually came out of the corporate. I was a vice president at a major technology company, and after about 15 years of that, God called my wife and I out of the corporate world into ministry. And so in 2011, we founded the Ships of Tarshish, which
Yep.
with our board of directors, which is the ministry that produced this film. And so the first project we focused on was actually on post-abortion recovery. It was a 10 episode Christian reality TV series called Surrender the Secret, where we followed five women who had had abortions in their past through their healing transformation with Jesus. And so it was just an incredible project. We put that out on the internet, got picked up by US networks here, Christian United States, globally. So that project, just in and of itself, was amazing. As the distribution of that then began to wind down, we prayed for God to show us the next topic and began to learn about sex trafficking. I didn't know anything about it at the time. That was about 6 to 7 years ago. And so 6 years ago, then our board of directors made the prayerful decision to go ahead and launch the production of Blind Eyes Open. So that's really the genesis of how this project got started.
So without giving too much away, tell me some of the stories that you guys tackle and that are shared in the film.
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing is the stories of the survivors. So there are six survivors in the film, and I'll share with you that as we began 6 years ago, as we began to learn the truth of sex trafficking here in America, some of the first people we started talking to in the name were the survivors who were sex trafficked as kids in America that are in the film, and they share their stories. And I'll tell you that as we interviewed them, as we talked with them, I'll never forget meeting and talking with the first survivor I had ever met, Edie Ray. She's in the film. And to hear her story was absolutely life changing for my wife and I. And then we met the next survivor, and her story was absolutely life changing. And again, not I tell you, not to make it about us, but I'm just sharing with you the personal experience
Yeah.
of meeting these survivors, which really led to my wife and I committing our lives to this fight. And so
Mm.
the film has these six survivors' stories, and then their testimonies of how Jesus helped them through it. And so that's really part of the thread is these six survivors' stories. They tell what happened, and then they tell how they escaped that and the role that Jesus Christ has played for them and for their restoration and recovery. And so their stories kind of lead the way through the entire film. And interwoven throughout the tapestry of the film, then, we have a total of 42 different individuals that are interviewed in the film. It was a massive project. And the other interviews that we completed are lawmakers and law enforcement we have other ministries, safe home operators, other churches that are engaged. And so, experts up in Washington, D.C., we dive into not only the survivors' stories, but we also focus then on where is this problem coming from in the first place? And how is this happening? So, we focus on the demand. We also focus on pornography and the role that pornography plays in fueling the demand. And so, it's really the film itself is very comprehensive deep dive into the problem of sex trafficking. But I'll also add this, that the unique thing about this film, and the reason why Fathom picked this up, I mean, when we first started our discussions with Fathom Events, who's now picked this up for the distribution of the film on January 23rd, when we first talked with them, their message to us was, there are over 100 documentaries on sex trafficking. What's different about this one? And then they saw the film and they recognized the difference is that the film not only tells the truth and the problem of sex trafficking and talks about the darkness, but it also then exposes the light and the light in Jesus Christ and the fact that there is hope for this problem in this country.
Yeah.
And our hope is in Jesus Christ. And so that's really the culmination of the message that this film delivers.
Yeah, and I want people to understand how this works. So, and we've done several of these where we're talking about these Fathom events. So this is a one-time event that happens on January 23rd, and it's in 800 screens around the country. And if it does well, and correct me if I'm wrong, if it does well, then it can add more screens, or you can talk to Fathom about a little bit further release or a couple more dates. Is that correct?
That is correct. So, like you said, about 800 theaters, January 23rd. It's a one night only event. So, people can go to blindeyesopen.com, and on that website, you can click a button to find theaters. And so, basically, type in your zip code, find out which theaters are going to be near you. So, with that, with 800 screens nationwide, everybody's going to have most likely that's fairly near them so they can go to the event. But, like you said, if it does well, Fathom does have the opportunity to bring the film back for an encore.
Right. So tell me about churches. Why should I take my church, my congregation, my small group? Why should I take a group from my church to go see this movie?
Well, I'll tell you, the reason we did this film, if I look back 6 years ago and really look at the genesis of why we produced this film and our board of directors prayerfully making the decision to do this film, it is to engage the church. Even 6 years ago, and even now, there are some churches that are involved and getting more involved in the fight against sex trafficking. But this is a call to the church, not only churches, but also the church, Christians around the country to get involved in this topic because we recognize, like I already said, our hope is in Jesus Christ. And so it's a call to the church to get engaged in this topic because we truly believe that Jesus is the answer and that Christians and the church throughout the country hold the answer to truly eradicating sex trafficking. It's to get to the heart of man. I talked about the demand, right? So the reason we have sex trafficking in America is because it's a demand problem. So it's a supply answer to a demand problem. The demand is what's fueling this problem. And so we recognize that through Jesus, we can reach the heart of man to then eradicate the demand. So it's really a major call to the church to get involved in this topic.
So tell me what do you think about how graphic it is? So if I'm a parent at a church, do I take my teenager, my tween to go see this movie? Will it scare them too much? What's your stance on that?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking that. So,
Yeah,
first thing I'll say is it's not rated by the Motion Picture Association, but it's basically the message goes out treat as PG-13. So that's the
yeah,
first thing I would say. The other thing I'd say though is when we talk about sex trafficking around the country, the first thing I always say is we will show nothing graphic. And this film follows that same model. There's nothing graphic that is shown in this film. That was one of the goals of the film from the very first place is that we produce a film on sex trafficking that is appropriate to be shown in churches. And so that's what the board has done. That's what we've done when we produced the film. So nothing is shown graphic. The second thing I would say is nothing is discussed in graphic detail.
right.
And so what I always share with parents who say, is this topic appropriate for my child? My answer is always the same. If your child is too young to understand what's being discussed, then it's just going to go right over their head. It's not going to matter for them. If your child is old enough to understand the topic that's being discussed, then I can assure you your child needs to know about this topic.
Yeah.
That's how we can protect them.
Yeah. Good. Good. Great. Okay, last question here. What can Christians do? And the film addresses this some, so I don't want to give too much away, but what can Christians do to stop sex trafficking in the US?
I'll tell you what, it's a matter of getting engaged. Obviously, pray, and we don't mean lightly. I'll tell you what, in being involved in this topic now for 6 years, we recognize this is a spiritual battle. What's being done to these kids around the country, it's not humane. Directly from So this is a spiritual battle, and we need to pray. Absolutely, so that's number one. But the second thing is to just get engaged. It's to get your church engaged. Identify organizations around your community and help with them in some way, whether it be financially or whether it be volunteering hours or in to get involved in this topic and to engage. That's really what it comes down to. And again, to get the churches to talk about this, and I mentioned pornography, I have to underline that again because we know pornography is the number one fueling factor to sex trafficking in America. And then we also know we have studies that say maybe 60 to 70% of men in America are either addicted to pornography or regularly looking at it. And those statistics are the same inside the church as well as outside the church. And so it's a
Yeah.
topic that we're calling pastors to engage in. The church needs to engage in this topic in a very meaningful way. And church and individuals, Christians, can help to engage their church as well as their community in going after this problem. And really, the focus is to eradicate it. We're not trying to put a band-aid on this problem. We are truly believing that we as a society can end this problem in America.
Good. Good. Well, the movie is Blind Eyes Open. Again, one night only, January 23rd. Tell us how we can get tickets and find a theater near us again.
Well, it's blindeyesopened.com. That's the website. On that website, you can see the trailer. You can click to get tickets. There are group sale tickets available as well. There's links to all this stuff. A church engagement guide. So if churches want to get involved in this and develop a campaign around the film, they can do that. There's resources there. There's also a prayer guide. So there's a tremendous amount of resources for people to get involved in this movement, to get involved and engage and go see the film on January 23rd. And they can do that through blindeyesopened.com.
Awesome. Jeffrey, thank you so much for the time, man. Really appreciate it.
Carl, thank you so much again for putting focus on this topic. Really do appreciate it. Thank you.